In the upper floors of one of Manhattan's most prestigious investment firms, Whitmore and Blackstone, everything gleamed from the glass-walled offices to the patent leather shoes worn by analysts who strutted down the marble corridors. Conversations buzzed with IPO rumors, hedge fund strategies, and vacation plans in St. Bart's. The air smelled of imported coffee, cologne, and quiet power. It was a place where last names mattered, watches whispered status, and connections could buy you more than just opportunity. They bought you invincibility. And yet, through these corridors of power, someone walked each day unnoticed. Her name was Helen Ray. No one paid her any real attention. At best, she was the background noise. At worst, the butt of a joke. Helen was a middle-aged woman, maybe early 60s, though she wore her age quietly. Her gray-brown hair was always tied back into a tight, functional bun. Her uniform, a faded blue smock and white sneakers with cracked soles blended into the blandness of the janitorial equipment she pushed from floor to floor. She carried a mop in one hand and a metal bucket in the other. Her movements were slow but deliberate. She never spoke unless spoken to, and even then, only nodded or muttered something polite. Most of the firm's employees didn't even know her name. She was just the cleaning lady. Some treated her with apathy, some with cruelty, especially the young associates on the 9th floor, the fresh Ivy League recruits who thought the world revolved around their forecasts and spreadsheets. Chismerut, Jordan Kel, Vonesokinsoid. Sons and daughters of billionaires, hedge fund executives, judges, and senators. They wore $5,000 suits, flew first class without a second thought, and ordered wine like they were born in Bordeaux. They never saw Helen as anything more than a maid. Sometimes they'd make accidents with their coffee or toss papers on the ground just to watch her clean. Once, Jordan had spilled his mocha intentionally, laughing, "Oops, guess I'm too successful to aim right." Chase responded with a smirk. "At least now she's got something to do other than sniffing our cologne." Helen said nothing. She just cleaned it up, careful and quiet as always. 3 years passed like this. Day after day, night after night, Helen Ray swept floors, emptied trash cans, wiped fingerprints from glossy glass tables, and disappeared without a word. But what no one knew, not even the firm's managing partners, was that Helen wasn't who they thought she was. Not even close. Helen Ray used to be Helen Waller. The same Helen Waller who, alongside her late husband, Victor Waller, co-founded Whitmore and Blackstone from their 2-bedroom apartment in Queens nearly 30 years ago. Back then, it wasn't a billion-dollar empire, it was just an idea, some personal capital, and a hell of a lot of grit. Victor handled the portfolios and networking. Helen built the operations, the legal frameworks, the hiring practices. They did it together. Every line of code in their early trading software, she wrote it. Every HR protocol, she implemented it. But when Victor died suddenly of a heart attack at age 52, everything changed. Her so-called partners, men and women she and Victor had mentored, supported, and trusted, moved fast. Within weeks, they used legal technicalities, silence, and vague financial concerns to edge Helen out of management. Her ownership was quietly diluted in a merger she was never informed about. Documents she never approved showed her signing off. A modest payout was promised but never delivered. Helen was erased. They offered her a title on paper and a laughable severance package in recognition of her years of service. The firm even spun a press release stating she was stepping down to pursue new personal projects. There was no lawsuit, no press, no scandal. She simply vanished. But Helen hadn't given up. She had watched enough of this world to know how it worked. Lawsuits would take years. Whispers would turn the truth into gossip. Instead, she did something no one expected. She changed her name. She moved out of her condo in Midtown, rented a modest 1-bedroom in Harlem, and submitted an application for janitorial work to Whitmore and Blackstone, her own company. Using a middle name and an outdated social security card, she passed through the hiring process without anyone recognizing her. And then she waited. For 3 years. She cleaned, observed, listened. She took notes. Screens left unlocked. Printers left running. Conversations whispered too loudly. meeting rooms with echoes. She learned important things, from embezzlement to insider trading, from tax fraud to hush payments. She documented everything. Helen Ray became a ghost with a perfect memory. Until the morning, everything changed. That Thursday, the firm buzzed with its usual morning energy. It was around 7:50 a.m. when the first elevator doors opened. The cleaning staff had already cleared out. Most of the analysts were rolling in, double-shot lattes in hand, Bluetooth earpieces buzzing. And then Helen walked in. But she wasn't wearing her smock. She was wearing a tailored navy blue suit, heels that clicked with purpose, and a white silk blouse buttoned perfectly at the collar. Her silver hair was down for the first time in years, framing her face like a soft storm. She wore a simple brooch on her lapel one Victor had given her their first year in business. Behind her walked two attorneys in sharp suits carrying a black briefcase and a thick manila folder. The receptionist looked up, confused. "Can I help?" "I'm here to see the board," Helen said. "Do you have an appointment?" Helen smiled faintly. "You'll want to notify Mr. Laramie immediately, and let security know not to interfere." She handed the receptionist a document stamped with the seal of the New York Secretary of State. It was a transfer of controlling interest. Certified, notarized, irrefutable. The receptionist blinked. Oh my God. Word traveled fast. Phone hung. Heads turned. By the time the partners gathered in the executive conference room on the 22nd floor, Helen was already seated at the head of the table. Most didn't recognize her at first. Some squinted. Others whispered, "Is that the cleaner?" "No, wait, that's Helen Waller?" And then silence. Her lead attorney stood and began to speak, detailing the years of buried documents, the illegal dilution of her shares, the forged signatures, and the withheld compensation. He presented a timeline, email trails, audio recordings, screen captures, 3 years' worth of data. Helen had orchestrated the perfect reversal. By legal authority and shareholder vote, she now owned the controlling interest in Whitmore and Blackstone. Effective immediately, she was reinstated as chairwoman and CEO. Those who had mocked her, gone. Chase Merritt, Aorden Kell, Vanessa Kincaid, hand-delivered termination letters by 10:15 a.m. Some tried to grovel, some shouted, some threatened to sue, but their voices only echoed in the quiet conference room, where Helen sat calmly, nodding to each as they were escorted out. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. She simply watched, measured, and composed. To the board, she said, "You didn't notice me for 3 years. That's all I needed." By noon, the firm's intranet was updated. A company-wide email was sent out announcing new leadership. At 3 p.m., a photo of Helen was uploaded to the firm's website, co-founder, returning CEO, and primary shareholder. That evening, as the last rays of sunlight reflected off the towers of Midtown Manhattan, Helen stood by the office window in her new corner office, sipping tea from a simple ceramic cup, a cup she'd found in the janitor's closet years ago. In the reflection, she saw not just herself but Victor, standing there, smiling. Sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the power, and sometimes the cleaner knows more than the CEO. Helen Ray Waller had returned. Not for vengeance, but for justice. And she brought with her a reminder no one at Whitmore and Blackstone would ever forget again. Never underestimate the woman who built the floor you're standing on.